Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Twitty. I'm your Pinellas County Property Appraiser. I'd like to welcome you to another public education session here from the Property Appraiser's office. This one focuses on anybody that is a property owner within the state of Florida. I assure you will walk away with some valuable nuggets here that may help you save some money tomorrow. As far as whether you're already an owner, whether you're buying, selling, all of those things, we're going to try and help you navigate through some of the pitfalls and Florida tax law and how that equates with the homestead exemption and Save Our Homes. Very powerful tax saving tools that exist within Florida law to help Florida homeowners. So I'm joined today with our Deputy of Assessment Administration, Kevin McKeon. We're going to do a tag team event for this one. So I'm going to kick it off here, go through some of the information, and then Mr. McKeon will hop up and go through some things, and we will go back and forth throughout. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. We do have someone monitoring that, and they will inject those questions in the appropriate places. Many times he'll know if we're going to be coming up on that information and it's going to get addressed, then he'll let you know that. So let's start off. I'm sure we have any new property owners that we have online with us today. It's important to know kind of how the process works within Florida. You may have come from a state where you didn't have an elected property appraiser. You had an elected or an appointed assessor. Similar in our roles, but not exactly the same in many cases, depending on what state you came from. So in the state of Florida, you have 5 constitutional officers that are seated in each of Florida's 67 counties. That includes your property appraiser, your sheriff, your supervisor of elections, your clerk of the circuit court, and your tax collector. So they all have very specific constitutional duties and perform those within their county on 4-year terms. So we are often mistaken for the tax collector. We are not. That's your tax collector at present right there, Mr. Thomas. So we have very distinct duties. The tax collector is associated with the DMV. They run all those operations from the state level at the county level here for DMV purposes. You can also renew or obtain fishing licenses, your concealed weapons permit, those types of things. Obviously, you get your driver's license and do your road test through there. And they do collect the property tax payments. And those are typically mailed at the end of October, usually received right at the beginning of November. And then those that do not have their funds escrowed are able to pay those with a 4% discount starting in November, with a 1%. That discount diminishes by 1% per year up through February, and need to all be paid in full before April 1st. So here at the Property Appraiser's office, what we do, our constitutional duty, is to value every parcel of real estate and tangible personal property. And tangible personal property would consist primarily of your business equipment. That's what would exceed the $25,000 exemption that all property owners or all owners are entitled to in most cases. So it typically falls upon business equipment that would actually constitute a taxable event. So about 450,000 parcels. We value those as of every January 1. That January 1 is that critical date for us. That applies to when we approve exemptions. When somebody's going to qualify for an exemption, they have to qualify as of that by that January 1. It also affects our valuation. So that's our effective date of valuation each and every year. The other thing we do is we maintain all the parcel maps. So if you go on our website, you'll see all the different parcel data. Please keep in mind, that is not surveyed. Those are based off of legal descriptions from deeds that are recorded. and we do not have surveys on file in most cases, unless somebody provided them to us, and that's a fairly rare event. So highly encourage you, if you are looking for actual survey data, you want to make sure to get in touch with your lender or your title company that were involved in your last transaction. They will often have a copy of your survey in their file. Also, we report our values each and every year to the Department of Revenue and to the various taxing authorities. So we have a lot of taxing authorities here in Pinellas County, and we're going to get to that, so I'm not going to spill the beans on those numbers yet. And then obviously we handle lots of public customer service inquiries. And we track the ownership changes. That's how we keep our ownership records updated, and we look at that sales information to arrive at comparable sales to hit our January 1 numbers each year. So the taxing authorities in Pinellas County, we have about 58 of them at present, and those are all the different governmental entities that and quasi governmental entities that are able to essentially assess a millage rate against our taxable values. So we arrive at those taxable values each and every year. The taxing authorities develop a millage rate, a preliminary one, that they bounce against our values to arrive at their budgets. And that's basically for whatever their public service that they're providing. So, police, fire, schools, county government, general fund, juvenile welfare board. There's, like I said, there's 58 different taxing authorities. So a lot going on there. We've got our 24 municipalities. You've got 16 fire districts, plus a bunch of these other taxing authorities that are mentioned on here. And then we have tax districts too. So a district can be comprised of a multitude of those authorities inside that district's boundaries. So kind of touched on some of this already, but they hold their budget workshops to arrive at their proposed millage rates. Then we end up sending out the notice of proposed property taxes based on our January 1 values. We send those out as in the third week of August each year. Then the boards and councils will meet again, and they'll determine what they want to settle on for their final millage. And once they've done that, then that information gets passed back to us and the tax collector. Tax collector generates the bills. Those go out at the end of October. Those are received in early November. So here's a quick view at some of the key dates on the timeline. Again, we talked about the importance of January 1. The ones in bold are really mostly related to our office. So March 1 is the timely filing deadline for most exemptions and for homestead. April 1 is the deadline for tangible personal property tax filings. And then we certify our values to the Department of Revenue and send it to the taxing authorities on July 1. Moving along to the back half of the year. In August, this year it will fall on August 19th is when we drop our trim notices. So those will be mailed out. So our next session, just that we do next month, will be on the trim notices in that document. And Mr. McKeon will be going through that in great detail and really helping you understand that. So that's a really important document to read, because that tells you what your value is going to be for this tax roll year, as well as you want to make sure that you have any exemptions that you believe you qualified for are showing on that document, because if they aren't, you still have a small window of time to get back with us. So, and just to let you know, this year's values have already been rolled out to the website. So we did that about 2 weeks ago. The preliminary values that we arrived at on July 1 are on the website right now. All of the most of the exemption information is there too, but some of that is still in flux. But I encourage you to look there, because if you do have a question about your value, you can actually contact us now. You can reach out, request to talk to your area appraiser, and they'll explain how they arrived at the value of your property. So moving along here, October 4th, that's the date that we extend the roll to the tax collector. And that's a precursor to them sending out the tax bills. And we talked about the discount and the tax payment deadline there on March 31st. All right, so now we're moving into how we actually arrive at those values. So most people are used to they get a loan for their home. There might be an appraisal involved. In many cases, there is an appraisal involved, but there's typically one value that is looked at, and that's an as-is market value in most cases for the majority of homeowners. On our website and in our information and in our world per Department of Revenue and statutory reasons, there are 3 different values, just to make things a little more complicated for you guys. So we have what we call just market value, which is our estimate of market value on your property, which typically lags the actual market because we're looking back in time. So we're looking retrospectively a little bit with our data to arrive at a valuation as of that effective date of January 1. So you may already be, here we're already basically 6 months later. So if you're getting an appraisal done today, it would be as of this date, not as of January 1. So just keep that in mind. Our values are always locked in as of that January 1. Now, assessed value. Assessed value is the value capped by the Save Our Homes cap or the non-homestead 10% cap. So if it's the year after a new purchase, assessed value and just market value are going to be one and the same because that new buyer is going to reset to market. So assessed value will jump back up to just market value. Now it can be reduced in that year 1 of their full ownership if they do have benefit from some portability. That would then move down the assessed value. And Mr. McKeon will get into more detail on that here going forward. Then the other number that we look at is taxable value. And that's the one that the taxing authorities are really focused on. And it's also the one that essentially is the determinant of your tax bill. It's 50% of your tax bill. So, and that is essentially the assessed value less any exemptions that you may qualify for. And just so you know that the term ad valorem, when you hear that, that is Latin, which means according to value. So the math is real simple in for arriving at a tax bill at its highest level. It's essentially value times rate equals taxes. And that value is your taxable value, and that rate is your millage rate. Also you may want to refer to it as think of it as a tax rate. And that results in your ad valorem taxes. Here's a quick example based on 100,000. Remember, a mill is equivalent to $1 per every 1,000 of taxable value. So $100,000 times 20 mills would be equivalent to $2,000 of ad valorem taxes. Here's some language that basically just defines what that mill is as a unit of measure. Now, outside of ad valorem taxation, you could live in a property that is subject to a non-ad valorem tax. Now, a non-ad valorem tax is also referred to as special assessment. You may be in a neighborhood where they've undergrounded utilities, or they might have a special lighting district. You might have some other thing that they need to create a uniform assessment down your street, and they would put an assessment over and above. We have some fire districts that have operated under non-ad valorem taxation as well. So it's more of a flat rate typically, and it's in some cases, if it's for undergrounding or something like that, it might be for a limited period of time and then it could go away. If it's for like a fire district, it would likely live on into the future. Now we're going to touch on how we actually value property here at the Property Appraiser's office. So in the appraisal profession, there are 3 approaches to value. You have the cost approach, you have the sales comparison approach, and you have the income approach to value. When it comes to a single family home, the 2 approaches that are the primary drivers of value are typically your sales comparison approach and your cost approach. And the sales comparison approach is usually your number 1, the cost follows number 2, in that hierarchy, depending on how old the home is. The more depreciation that is in the improvements of an asset, then the less meaningful a cost approach can be. The sales comparison approach typically would garner more weight. The income approach is generally used in income producing properties. So certainly in your commercial properties that are income producing, and it can move over into some residential properties as well. And then what we do is referred to as mass appraisal versus fee appraisal. So fee appraisal is what we were referring to when we talked about a lender hiring an appraiser to appraise your house to make sure that everything looks okay for the bank to issue that amount of funding against that collateral. That's they're doing one property at a time for a very specific purpose, usually for lending purposes, but they can also do litigation support services. There's a myriad of services that fee appraisers can provide. In mass appraisal, we use that within the government sector for taxation purposes to arrive at our valuations, because we have to value so many properties within a 1-year time frame. That 450,000 parcels, we wouldn't be able to achieve that by doing one appraisal at a time within that time frame. So we have to use slightly different tools. So we're looking at a lot of data, we're running statistical models, and we try to arrive at fair and equitable values across the board. So we're trying to find uniformity, both we want vertical equity and we want horizontal equity as close as we can get it across the entire county. So that's where those two part ways a little bit. But essentially, the theory is the same. Now, if you have questions about your value, as I said, you already have values on the website right now, so you can go check as we're in the middle of this session today. You can pull up your parcel and you can check the value, and if you had any issues, you can contact our office and you can have that discussion with your area appraiser. You can also request an informal meeting anytime from now up through trim time, or even a little bit after trim. And then you've got 25 days following trim notices being dropped to file a value adjustment board petition. Now, a lot of those we get settled before we actually even have to go to a hearing. But if you don't get satisfaction or hear, if you still think that you're right and we're not, you have that right to go before a special magistrate in a value adjustment board petition hearing, and those typically start taking place in October. And that filing, if you do want to file a VAB petition, you would do that through the clerk of the court's office. They administer that function, but all that information is located on your trim notice. I will encourage you, once again, make sure when that comes in, you'll see our logo and my name on there. Open that up and take a look at it. There's also an informational supplement in there that covers a lot of scenarios for people that have just bought or sold in the last 2 years that will really help them wrap their head around why their value may be moving so much within that short time frame. That answer is right there in those documents typically. There's also a link on our to our trim notice guide that has tons of helpful information as well. That's online. It's available on our website, and you can just find the link that will take you directly there on that trim notice information as well. So encourage you to do that. Unfortunately, the average life of a trim notice is 7 seconds, and that's usually the time it takes for somebody that received it in their mailbox to walk to the trash can, and we are trying to extend that life. We would like that thing to last at least to the length of the time that you can read it, because there is a lot of good information in there. All right, I'm going to go through some value trends here, and then I think I'm going to hand it over to Mr. McKeon just to give you a little history lesson on values in Pinellas County, going back over roughly the last 20 years. So these blue bars here reflect that just market value that we talked about. It would be reflective of all parcels within the county. The gold bars are taxable value. Difference between the two is a function of your assessment caps and your exemptions. And you can see over time that has created quite a gap as we move out here. Oh, you can't see my laser pointer, can you? How about now? Okay, so I'll do that again. So this gap here between the blue and the gold is a function of your assessment caps and your exemptions. And you can see that that gap has grown. So taxable value has not increased at the rate of just market value. In a rough sense, you're going to see that that difference between those two is largely a function of what would be pent up in portability on homestead properties. But we'll get into that in more detail. But you can see we're over $227 billion countywide of just market value and over $135 billion of taxable value. New construction, just to give you a feel, it's been hovering around $1 billion over the last 4 or 5 years. This year it spiked up considerably, up to nearly $1.8 billion of new construction. That is brand new taxable value that doesn't affect anyone else's. So if you were to roll millage rates back and have a flat budget, those would be brand new, fresh taxable dollars on top. And those aren't dollars if taxable. That's 1.8 of taxable value. So you still have to multiply that against the respective millage rates. Excuse me. So what I want to point out here, so this is our residential market trends. This is for the 10-year trend on single family transactions. So last few years, we were seeing, record numbers of transactions. Back in 2021, we hit our all-time high for single family, almost 17,000 single family sales. Obviously, you can see we've been sliding down. That's no surprise the last couple of years as interest rates have risen. The number of transactions have waned. We're kind of in line for the first half of this year to be similar to 2023's numbers from what we see so far. But down here, you can see the median sale price per square foot increase. In 2021 and 22, it was incredibly healthy. It was 21% 2 years in a row. Then last year it was 4.8, and then and this is really what we're looking at for that January 1 date of 2024. This is really the year's data that we're looking at. And now this first half of 2024, you're seeing it's about 3.6% overall. So these are Pinellas Realtor stats here. You can see the median sale price about $485,000 on a single family and $290,000 for condos and townhomes. Median days to contract and close have gone back to a more typical time frame. You're looking roughly 1 month to contract, another additional month to close, a little longer in condos, and that's not a shocker because of some of the statutory laws that have changed surrounding condos in the last couple of years with the new reserve requirements and the milestone inspections that have to be done. We're seeing a lot of recalibration of condominium values, and they're still arriving at what some of those repairs are going to be. And we were talking about special assessments earlier. There are going to be a lot of special assessments within condominium associations. Many of them have already occurred, but there are still many that are on the come as these inspection reports get done. So that has led to more supply in the condominium market. That at 6 months, that's basically considered a balanced market. It's really neither a buyer's or a seller's market. However, I will say it's certainly tilted towards a buyer's market in condos. Single family still in favor of the seller. Values are still rising in most neighborhoods, but we do see a lot that are flattened, and we have seen some that have gone down a little bit. So all really comes down to the area, the neighborhood, and the amount of supply within a certain respective area. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. McKeon. He's going to jump into some exemption information for y'all. Do you unmute?
Good.
Yeah, you can just use the arrows there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Twitty. Everybody hear me okay out there? Great. Good afternoon. There's a lot of material to go through in this 1 hour session. I'm going to go through it really quickly. This presentation will be available on our website shortly after we're done. So if you want to walk me in it. Test 1, 2.
Yeah, there.
Okay. Do I need to repeat that? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. There's a lot of material here. Going to go through it fairly quickly. If you have any additional questions, you can call our office at any time, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 727-464-3207. And this presentation will also be available on our website if you wanted to watch it again after we're done. So, homestead exemption, why apply? Basically, it's an exemption that reduces your taxes. So why not apply? If you are a Florida resident and you own and occupy as of January 1, a particular resident, you will be eligible for the homestead exemption. There are other exemptions available as well. As you see, there's an extensive list of exemptions. Most of them relate to either you're over 65 and your income is below a certain threshold, which enables you to get an additional senior exemption. You are a veteran with a disability, or you have a disability, or you're widower. So there are some strict requirements, but we encourage you to look at our website, call us, and we can let you know if you can be eligible for any of these additional exemptions. We believe everybody should get the exemptions they're entitled to under the law. So there are 2 homestead exemptions, each worth $25,000. Okay, the first $25,000 exemption is off the value between 0 and 25, and this applies to all millage rates. There is no exemptions for the value between 25 and 50, and the second $25,000 exemption falls between the $50,000 and $75,000 value. So if you have an assessed value greater than 75, you will get the full 50,000. But that second 25,000 is not an exemption for school millages. Back when it was instituted in 2008, they didn't want to affect the school revenue. So that 25,000 is not an exemption for school. And just so you're aware, coming up on the November ballot, an Amendment 5, there will be an amendment that will affect, potentially, if passed, this second $25,000 exemption. It will be indexed to consumer price index, to the CPI, consumer price index, every year, starting in 25 thereafter, if it passes. It requires a 60% approval rate throughout the state. So for instance, that second 25, if CPI is 4% in 24, that second 25 will move up $1,000, 4% of that 25,000 to 26,000 for 2025, and will continue to index to CPI going forward. Can never go backwards in the future. So look for that amendment on your ballot. And then anything over $75,000, there is no exemption. Save Our Homes. We get a lot of questions with regard to Save Our Homes. And we get a lot of questions from new homesteaders with regard to once they get their trim notice coming up in August, or they get their tax bill in November, say, why does my neighbor pay so much less in taxes than I do? We get a lot of questions about that. Here's a typical example. This is in St. Petersburg of a neighborhood that basically took off in the 17-18 timeframe. The house on the right was bought in 1993 and was homesteaded immediately. And through the Save Our Homes cap, meaning once you establish homestead, your assessed value for tax purposes can only go up by the consumer price index or 3%, whichever is less. So that particular home has had that homestead on for almost over 30 years. They only paid $777 in taxes in 2003. The home on the left, same house, same square footage, same lot size, was bought in 2020. Their taxes are $4,700. So one thing to keep in mind as a new home buyer, if you bought in 2024, your taxes in 25 if let's say you bought the home on the right, and you paid say $400,000 for that house. Your taxes in 25 will be reassessed to market value, and you could see taxes even higher than the one on the left come 2025. We encourage you to use the tax estimator on our website because that will compute what taxes are potentially due, an estimate of what taxes are potentially due in 2025. It's very important you understand this when going in. We encourage title companies, mortgage companies to use our tax estimator as well as realtors, because taxes that are currently on a home could be significantly different, as you can tell by this example, the year following a purchase. So 1992 is when the Save Our Homes cap came in, because what was happening is market values were increasing dramatically and Florida homeowners were being priced out of their home. So a law was passed that said, once you've established homestead as a Florida resident, the increase in your assessed value for tax purposes can only go up by 3% or CPI, whichever is less. And this is a snapshot of the last 12 years or so of CPI. As you can see, in the early years, 13 through 17, I mean, CPI was well south of 2% or right around 2%. The last few years have been CPI, as you know, has been relatively high, but it's capped. So the 7% in 2022, the cap can only go up by 3%, the assessed value. Now, as far as the indexing of that ballot measurement on Amendment 5, it will go up by the actual CPI, it's not capped at 3%. So, and then there's also a non-homestead cap. If your property is a commercial property or a let's say a second home because you have a homestead elsewhere in another state, that is capped at 10% a year. So once you purchase it, let's say you purchase in 24, purchase in 23, 24 sets your base, market value equals assessed, and then from that point, assessed value can only go up by 10% if market exceeds 10%. If market's only 5, it only goes up by 5. And all caps reset January 1 after a transfer of the property. And we'll get into things later. A transfer doesn't necessarily mean a sale. It could be transfer of ownership as well. So this is a quick example of how the Save Our Homes cap works. You've got a market value increasing by 5%, the Save Our Home cap increasing by a maximum of 3%. So over time, you can see that this particular property, the year after purchase, started at 300 and assessed value was 300. Go to year 7, you've got a market value now of 400, little over 400, and an assessed value of 358. So you've created about $44,000 of value that you're not being taxed on this particular homesteaded property. That is called the Save Our Homes benefit, or the differential between just and assessed value. And this, obviously, markets go up and markets go down. So in the case of a rising market, which is the blue line here, you are seeing a gap between assessed and just market. If market starts coming back down, which we saw in the 2007 to 2012 timeframe, your assessed will continue to rise because it's capped at a maximum of 3% as your market comes down. And when they meet, they ride together. Assessed can't be greater than market at any point in time. They ride together, and then now we've seen a trend of rising market values. So you see that gap now increasing. Just a quick fun stat of the the residential residences in Pinellas County, 34% are non-homesteaded and 66% are. So there are a lot of investors who have bought individual homes. There are a lot of second homes here from people who have a homestead in another state. So it's about 2/3, 1/3 ratio. Again, to touch on the 10% cap for those non-homesteaded property, the one thing that's critical to understand, that 10% cap does not apply to school millages. Again, when they instituted that cap, they didn't want to affect taxes for schools. So your full market value is taxed for school taxes, and in a lot of jurisdictions, those school taxes represent about 1/3 of your millage rate. So it is it's a pretty significant charge and something you need to understand. And the cap remains if ownership doesn't change. But if you apply for homestead, okay, it's treated under the laws of the state of Florida just like a new purchase. The year you apply for homestead, market value equals assessed value. So if you had that 10%, a gap, if you had a benefit from that 10% cap, that goes away. So in some cases, and we are happy to help walk you through it, you're better off if you've built up a big gap not having homestead exemption, because your taxes would be higher. And we're happy to help you walk through that process if you see that. What's that? Oh yeah, at least for several years, correct. Eventually, as market equals gets closer to assessed, it makes more sense to have homestead and build that Save Our Homes cap. And also, there's new construction goes on over the cap. If you expand your home and you add square footage, put in a pool, that the Save Our Homes cap is added, and then you add the value of the new construction. Portability. Everybody wonders what portability is. So you have that home that you've lived in for several years, and you develop this gap between market value and assessed value, the Save Our Homes differential. You get to take that with you to another Florida property. If you decide to sell this home, buy another home, and establish homestead, you have to file for homestead in order to have that transfer. And the time limit is 3 years from January 1. So if you sold in January of 23, the first January 1 that counts is January of 23, the year you sold. Then 24, then 25. You have to establish homestead by 12/31 of 25, meaning before January 1 of 26, comes about. So basically, in order to estimate your portability, you look at the market value in the year you sold compared to your assessed value. That amount you can take with you. Then you look at the market value of the new property you bought, the January 1 after you bought. If that market value is higher, you get the full amount of portability. If it's lower, you get a little bit less on a pro rata basis, up to a maximum of $500,000. The most you can take with you is $500,000. And believe it or not, there are a lot of properties out there with a Save Our Homes cap of greater than $500,000.
That just value, that market value you refer to is our market value, not necessarily what they paid for the property.
Correct. Not what they paid for the property and not what you sold it for. Right. The year you sell, it's the market value that we have on the property. And the year you buy, the January 1 is the market value that we put on the property or another property appraiser in another county. So this gives you a little bit of a timeline. If you sell at the beginning of the blue bar up here at this start time here, you actually have almost a full 3 years. If you sell here, right at the end, you have about 2 years. This used to be only 2 years, only 2 January 1s. But our office and Mr. Twitty was influential in getting a 3rd year added back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, effective 2019.
It went to the ballot in 2020.
Oh, okay, 2020. Okay. So that was important because in a lot of cases, if you sold at the end of year 1, you only had a year to qualify for homestead. And if you were waiting on a condo to be finished or a newly constructed home, sometimes you lost your portability because it wasn't ready as of that next January 1. It was ready February, March, April, and you lost your portability. So it was important that this was added to the benefit of the taxpayers. Okay. Mike Mr. Twitty has mentioned this already many times, and I'm going to say it again. This is the most important document you will receive from our office annually. Please pay attention to it. The issue that comes about mostly is on that top right-hand corner, we're required to say, do not pay, this is not a tax bill. So the first thing people do is that 7-second walk to the trash can and say, oh, I don't need to pay attention to this. But this is an extremely important document if you bought a home in 2023, for instance, because this is the first year of the value of your new home that we've established the just value, and just value should equal assessed value because it's the January 1 after your purchase. If assessed value equals taxable value, we go back right here. If assessed equals taxable, you have no exemptions. You either have not applied or you're not yet approved because we're waiting on information. And if you expected to have a homestead exemption, say $50,000 off of that assessed value, which equates to $800 or $900 a year, beginning the first year, and then Save Our Homes cap kicks in after that, it's important. You will receive this August 21st, probably 20th or 21st. You have a little over 3 weeks. You still can qualify for homestead exemption. And the date at the bottom of this trim notice will be September 13th, 2024. If you ignore this notice and you contact us on Monday, September 16th, we can't do anything about it. We can't approve a homestead exemption for 2024. But if you contact us before September 13th, or even on September 13th, with the required information, we can still get your homestead approved. Or any other exemptions that you feel you're entitled to. Your trim notice will also be on our website. You can, if for some reason you're out of town and you didn't get your mail, you can pull up our website. That trim will be posted on our website. And this is showing you where to go, and our quick pick tools right there is trim notice. You can download it, you can print it. And please, if you have any questions, call our office. We're more than happy to help you with to discuss either your value or your exemptions. Along with the notice of proposed property taxes is this informational supplement. All this information revolves around, do you have any exemptions? Have you applied for exemptions? Is this the first year that you're eligible? This is very, very important information. We don't want you to lose out on an exemption that you're entitled to. So please pay attention to this. And now I'll turn it back over to Mr. Twitty, who will go through what I briefly discussed earlier, our tax estimator.
So as Steve pointed out, tax estimator is a very valuable tool. I can tell you that we're up to 65 of the 67 counties around the state now thankfully have some form of a tax estimator on their respective websites. And we hope to get that to 100% here shortly. It's a very effective way if you're shopping for a home or if you've recently purchased a home to know what lies ahead, so you can prepare for it. Where we find the most heartburn is when a homeowner is not properly informed ahead of time and they're looking at seller's taxes on an MLS listing, usually online. Those online listing platforms usually are showing seller's taxes, or they're doing a tax estimate, but it is usually grossly understated from our experience. So we actually were instrumental in working on championing legislation the last 2 years to try and change that. We have not gotten it across the goal line yet, but we are working it again this year with our associations. I'm legislative chair, Property Appraiser Association of Florida, and we will be championing that issue once again to try and get seller's taxes removed on the online listing platforms and a link to the respective property tax or to their respective property appraisers, tax estimators. There's another option within the bill for a sophisticated platform that is showing principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on their site to actually ingest the appropriate property tax estimate, so they can give their prospective buyers more transparency. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to get into the tool. There are several ways. So you can see right here, right on the homepage, there's a speed button here that will jump you in. You can jump in from the top down menus. And the way most people like to drive it is to go ahead and search their parcel, get to the parcel, and then right on the quick pick tool here that comes off the right side of the screen, they can click. Yeah, I don't want to lay the pointer on, so I'm here pointing away. If you can't see what I'm pointing at, there's the speed button. There's the top down, drop down, and then here's the quick pick tool that comes out off the right side once you've already pulled up your prospective parcel. Click that tax estimator, it already ingests the parcel ID and the property address, so you do not have to enter it again. And you'll end up with a screen that looks similar to this. As you can see, it would pre-populate this. You can choose the year of your purchase because that's important to how that calculation is done. If you have that information, you do not need to put in municipality information because we already identified the location and we know what tax district applies. You would enter your estimated purchase price in this case, decide whether you, let us know whether you're transferring a poured amount from a prior homestead or not. If you say yes here, if it's a Pinellas County port, it will pull up, it will open that, a window up below, and you can enter the address of the property that you are transferring homestead from. And that will factor into the calculation. And then you will want to, if you're going to be applying for homestead, obviously select yes down here, so that can do all the appropriate calculations for you. I will let you know that there's also a way you can use this if you're a home buyer and you're shopping, you want to compare jurisdictions against one another. Say you have a $500,000 budget on a house and you want to know, well, I want to look at that in Largo versus St. Petersburg. You don't even have to put any information up here. You just come in here and flip this to the appropriate tax district. And then you can run the rest of this estimator and you can do it for those two different jurisdictions and you'll get two different results and you can compare those. Just wanted to point that out. Realtors especially, like that tool. And this is what the result looks like once you've run it. You can see in this case, it's taking into account the prior residence, which had some portability benefit that is all factored in, and non-ad valorem, we pull those in if any exists from the prior tax roll year and give you a estimated total tax amount. You can obviously modify the estimate, print it out, email it, or start a new estimate. Like to point out, we do have an expert realtor in the room that is very proficient at using our tax estimator. So she does a great job helping us on the following. So Cody Powell is with us today, so thank you for being here. So the new website, hopefully everyone is enjoying the new .gov experience. We set out to build not the best in the state, the best in the country website. We started this and rolling it out. I spent 26 years as a state certified general appraiser and a broker in the private sector, and I worked throughout the state of Florida. It was a lot of property appraisal websites, and I worked across the country in certain jurisdictions. So I've seen a the good, the bad, and the ugly of appraiser websites, and we wanted to try and outdo as many as we could and put in a lot of practical tools, not only for our citizens and homeowners and our business owners, but also our daily business practitioners that work within the real estate industry that are really our recurring users of the site. So, not only appraisers, but obviously our real estate agents, or title and insurance agents, contractors, investors, and our county and city governmental agencies. So there's just so many people that touch the site on a daily basis, but we wanted to try and put as many tools in it as we could. Check my time here. It's a lot of activity, as you can see here, about 1.8 million users in 2023 and over 50 million page views. And that tax estimator gets run over 10,000 times a month. But we're not doing any live demo of the website today. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. McKeon. Close us out. I'll turn off your laser pointer so it's not distracting. Get back to you. Get back.
Thank you, Mike. We like to go through an area what we call common missteps, because this can cost people a lot of money in tax dollars. And we want to prevent that in every way possible. So we want to give you a little bit of color for some of the more common things we see on a daily basis. Okay, so homestead eligibility, one more time. You must own and occupy as of January 1. Now, if you bought in 2023, you obviously are eligible January 1 of 2024. State law says you have to file by March 1 of 2024. However, there's also a provision of state law that allows us to extend that deadline beyond March 1 if you provide an extenuating circumstance form as to why you couldn't file on time. Quite frankly, it could be any reason, and we will allow it up until the state imposed actual deadline of September 13th. Okay, after that, we cannot accept it by state law. So if you have not filed for homestead, if you bought in 23 and you are eligible, meaning you are a Florida resident, you have a driver's license, you have your auto registered here, et cetera, and you don't have a residency-based exemption in any other state or country or province or whatever you want, you would be eligible. We want to get you qualified for homestead. It's very important. Also, if you happen to get married in 2023 or 2024, if you got married in 23 and you both owned a home, you can only have one homestead in 2024. So if you got married in 23 and you both still have homestead on your property, one of them has to be removed. Please call our office and let us know which one, because we don't necessarily know you got married. And again, if you married in 2024, you have to remove one of them in 2025. You can keep both of them this year, because again, January 1, 25 is when you would have to remove one of those. Cap reset issues. Not only does a change of, does a purchase reset the cap, if you transfer your homestead into an LLC, somebody said, oh, it's a good idea for liability reasons, just put it into an LLC. You have just lost your homestead the next January 1. We have been very proactive over the last 4 or 5 years. When we see a deed filed that basically could trigger a reset of the cap, we send you a cap loss letter. Okay? Please pay attention to every bit of correspondence you get from our office, because that is a notification that says you still have time to do something about it. If you didn't want to lose your cap and create a much higher tax bill the following January 1, you can change that back before January 1, and it reverts back and there is no cap reset. Once it passes January 1, there's nothing we can do for you. So cap resets always cause a lot more taxes. So if you're thinking about changing your deed in any way, shape, or form, please be very careful. We always recommend you use an attorney, and we always recommend, if you're unsure if it will reset your cap or not, call our office. We're more than happy to help you. We have attorneys on staff who can say yes or no, this will or will not reset your cap. Okay. Homestead removal. If you know you're applying for homestead in another county, okay, for 2025, let's say you bought in 23 and you applied in another county in 2024, your homestead must be removed here in Pinellas County. You can't have two. You can't have two anywhere in the state of Florida, you can't have two benefits anywhere in the United States. So please, and if you're buying a home, please be sure that the seller is going to leave the homestead on it. Because if they, for some reason, file in another county or have filed and have not let us know to remove it, there is a good chance that your cap will reset, a more than better chance your cap will reset in 2024, not in 2025. Because that homesteader filed in another county, we have to honor that, and we have to remove the homestead in this year. When you buy a home, you inherit the homestead of the current owner through 12/31, if that stays on the property. So if you're contemplating buying a home, make sure now would probably, we're usually talking about March, April, May, June. Now it's probably going to stay on, more than likely. But please be careful, because we don't want you to pay more taxes in the year you bought than you have to. Renting a property. Here's the rule. If you rent for more than 30 days in 2 consecutive years, you lose your homestead in that second year. So if you rented 31 days in 2023 and you've rented 32 days in 2024, you've lost your homestead for 2024. I know there are a lot of people who are renting when they're out of town here and there, but please be careful, because once you lose that homestead, it's hard to get it back. Unless you're continuously renting it, then you may not care that your taxes go up, but when you lose that cap and you see the increase in taxes, you will care. Changes to the deed. Adding a son or daughter, adding a brother or sister. Depending on how that deed is worded, you could lose a percentage of your homestead or all of it. Please be careful. Please use an attorney. We see a lot of DIY deeds, and they are wrought with errors. And once it passes January 1, there's nothing we could do to help you fix it. So please, again, contact us before making deed changes. We're happy to help you. And now to wrap it up, I'm going to give a pitch for our next public education series. It is August 15th. We did not spend a lot of time on the trim notice today, other than show you a picture of what it looks like. We will go through in detail of everything on that trim notice and the importance of it, the exemptions, the budget meetings, the VAB deadline, to file a petition. So there's a ton of information on that two-sided piece of paper that I hope you can join us to go over that, because we're more than happy to educate you on the trim notice. And there is a trim guide on our website. You can look at last year's trim notice on your property. Even though it may not be yours, it's still there. It's the prior owner's trim notice, and you can also read the trim guide, and it can walk you through the different sections. Buyer and seller fact sheets. These are great tips, great things to know. Again, on our website, buying and selling a home, and the pitfalls of where you can get in trouble on both sides. Stay in the know. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, or more than happy to welcome you to one of our public education sessions, either in person or virtually. And another great service offered through the clerk of the court is a free monitoring service. Basically, you sign up at www.propertyfraudalert.com. It's a free service. You register your name and your spouse's name. And basically, if anything is filed at the clerk's office, whether it be a notice of commencement, whether it be a mortgage satisfaction, whether it be something that maybe you didn't know about in a name that's even close to your name, you will get an alert either via text or via email of your choice. And it's important to, this is a great service. I subscribe to it, and I have been alerted on many occasions, even with I'm Kevin J. McKeon. I've gotten one when there was a Kevin P. McKeon registered something. Thank goodness it wasn't mine, or didn't relate to my property. So it's important to pay to do that and take advantage of that service. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and thank Mr. Twitty as well. And
Thank you, Kevin.
yep, thank
Appreciate
you.
your work
All
today.
right, very good.
Great. Info.
Questions out there? And nope.
One other way you can follow us is we do have e-newsletters on our site as well. So, and they cater to homeowners, realtors, or I should say even all real estate professionals, and business owners. So you can sign up for those as well to stay in the know with what we have going on from our office. But with no questions in the chat, is that right, Kyle? Okay, so we answered everybody's questions. I would imagine as we went through everything, it was a lot of information in an hour, but I hope you all had some good takeaways from it. There's a lot of things and a lot of places people can stumble through the process, and we're here to help. Just wanted to let you know our average on hold time is only 9 seconds, so don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call us. But our website is always live 24/7, 365. So that's a resource available to you at any time. And you can always come in and see us in person as well.